Well, hello and welcome to our farmhouse. I am going to take you along with me on this winter January day, keep you company as we all are just spending more time indoors. Now, this first shot here is the day before the day I'm going to be spending with you. I am getting ready some things for tomorrow to make the day a bit more smooth. One is my ciabatta dough that I'm stretching and folding. I have a blog project tomorrow, and of course I have to feed my family, and I'm testing out a recipe for ciabatta. So I'm actually creating 2 bowls. One has a half cup more of flour. Then I also am cutting up bread that did not turn out so well to make into a French toast casserole. The other day, I don't know what happened. I was making my usual bread that I make all the time from the blog. I have the recipe over there. If you just search no knead bread, it's the bread I make all the time. But I guess I wasn't counting properly, and I ended up putting in not enough liquid, and I had to add more flour. Anyways, I had to knead it. It turned out bad. So I know when that happens, I'm gonna make French toast. So I added, I think, a dozen eggs, a bunch of milk, some brown sugar on top of the bread, some pumpkin spice, and put that over top the bread and just put it in the refrigerator. I like to do this even if I don't have bread mess ups, just because it's such an easy breakfast. The kids start a lot of winter days by playing games because it's dark before we get out to do chores. I would have probably added some fruit to this, but Luke got it going before I even woke up. Thankfully, I got to sleep a little bit and he got the French toast in the oven, but it was still absolutely delicious and a good treat for the morning. All right, now we're gonna get to that ciabatta. This is so good. So I'm starting by flouring my surface. Now again, if you want the printable recipe, it is now up on the blog at time of posting this video. But I put the dough from yesterday in the refrigerator overnight. This is so that it holds its shape nicely whenever I'm cutting into it, and it gives it a longer bulk ferment time without over fermenting. So I'm just removing the dough from the bowl, putting it onto the counter and just gently flattening out. I'm trying not to get rid of any of those beautiful bubbles that were created through the stretch and fold process and then the fermenting. Next, I'm going to cut it into 8 equal parts. This does not have to be perfect. I'm just trying to make 8 rolls as best I can. I do this by cutting down the center and then 3 more cuts on each side for 8 rolls. Next, I'm going to transfer these to parchment paper and allow them to get puffy. I think I did about 2 hours. This can depend on the temperature in the house. You don't want to do it too long because you don't want them to lose their shape or over ferment, but you do want them puffy. So I did about 2 hours on this day. Now, you might notice in a few shots as the day progresses that the window opens. So I plan to shoot this cozy winter day video, it's January, and ended up being a 68-degree day. So instead, it's really not cozy, but we're doing all the same things. We just have the windows open to air out the house. Now, these other 8 that you see me putting up here on the stove, this is my batch with half a cup more flour. Spoiler alert, I end up preferring the one with the less flour. They both turn out fine, but for some of those big holes in the bread, which is what I'm looking for, a hydrated dough, the less flour wins. I just was making sure that there was going to be enough flour. Now I have some cleanup to do. You'll see my camera sitting out on the counter. That's because I had to do some photography for the ciabatta dough that's mixed into the day. I didn't include that in the vlog, but that is something that I quickly did, was shoot the dough as it was rising, as I pulled it out of the bowl, and then the final shots I end up doing later. So as a blogger, there are lots of times where a camera is sitting out on the countertop. Just becomes commonplace around here. I have my cup of coffee and I want to take a break from this cozy winter day to tell you about today's video sponsor, Native. I have been a huge fan of the Native brand for probably 2 or 3 years now. I find that the deodorant scents that they offer are subtle yet enough. It also works really well so that I actually feel fresh and don't smell. It works for me in the summer months as well as the winter months. Some of my favorite scents are lavender and rose. It's a subtle yet beautiful smell. Citrus and herbal musk. This one's a little bit stronger, so if you're doing something that maybe you're gonna sweat a lot, And then I really love the subtle scent, especially in the wintertime, of this buttercream and French vanilla. It is paraben-free, aluminum-free. Native protects odor all day with 72-hour protection, so you can trust that it's going to work. Native also offers a plastic-free version of the deodorant using the exact same formula but for a more sustainable packaging. Native is offering Farmhouse on Boone viewers a discount on your order of Native deodorant. 3 deodorants would be $39, but if you use my link and code FARMHOUSE2, you'll get them for $26. That's over 33% off. With my code, you can also get 20% off any body wash or lotion. There will also be a special link in the description box below. I have some organizational projects that I need to get done today. You probably get tired of seeing me do the same organizing all the time. That's just because things get out of place quickly. I try things out, they don't work. So first I'm going to move a few things out of this cabinet and move my pots and pans I had in the pantry out of the pantry. My efforts are interrupted by babies that need to be held, lunch preparations, but throughout this day I will make some progress. I'm bringing some pots down to the basement just to see if we can live without them. This is what Dawn from The Minimal Mom calls time will tell. Before you get rid of something, you first put it somewhere to see if you need it. And turns out that one of the pots I brought downstairs, so I'm recording this voiceover the next day, Luke asked for it the very next day. He's like, hey, where's that big pot? And I'm like, okay, well, go get that. I don't anticipate though that we're going to need the large cast iron Dutch oven because I have other Dutch ovens that I end up using in its place, some enameled ones. After bringing those down, I moved to the pantry and I want to clean up this new copper vessel that I found at an antique shop. But then of course my sink's full of dishes, so I get some of those done. And then I'm giving a thorough cleaning to this copper storage container that I want to put flour in. It has a cute little flour label on it. I think it'll be a nice change of pace from all of the glass jars and lids that I have in the pantry, and then just give me room to store something else. At some point, I think maybe somebody broke the lid to one of them, and so I have a need for one for the oatmeal. And then I also found these copper scoops that I think are beautiful. So I'm giving them a thorough cleaning because I want to put them into some of the glass jars as a display, and then obviously also to use. So many times I'm not doing precise measurements, like whenever I'm feeding my sourdough starter. So I like to have scoops in my flour for that, even though you can't measure precisely. So I'm gonna use this all-purpose flour jar for oatmeal and the copper one for my all-purpose flour. And I have to turn the jar around because it has the wrong label on it, and I might eventually change it, but I'm not all that worried about it because oats are so clear as to what they are. Whenever I have something like einkorn or spelt or whole grain flour, all-purpose, I really regret if I don't label the jar because I think I'm gonna remember and then I totally don't. And I have a lot of different grains here in this house. I have rye and then all the ones I just mentioned. And so I'm usually pretty careful about labeling, but with oats, it's not a problem. I'm also just in my pantry getting down all these things that at some point we bought and did not put in the right spot. We really struggle with this in our family. I have a basket for dried fruit, nuts, and coconut, but whenever I get them, I don't always put them in the right spot after a grocery haul. The ciabatta rolls are looking nice and poofy, and it's time to bake them until golden. I'm pulling out the one with the more flour, and then I'm experimenting on the second one by spritzing it with water to make the tops even more golden. It's nice to have some steam in the oven to make that crispy texture and give it a nice golden color. And then I'm making some sandwiches for lunch with cheese, salami, lettuce, mayo. Not the most winter meal, but we have a lot of ciabatta and didn't want to waste an opportunity for some absolutely delicious sandwiches. And here I'm going to share with you some of the photos that I took for the blog. Again, head to farmhouseonboone.com to get the printable recipe. back to the pantry. The kids are down for naps, so I have a little time to pull this thing together. I'm trying to not only organize, but also clean. And then I'm taking down some Christmas decor lately, just piece by piece as I think about it. It's overwhelming to think about taking it all down, but right now I'm taking down these mugs so that I can remove some things that are in the pantry and bring them to other locations where I have jars set up. So the brown sugar, these were cluttering up the pantry, and I have designated jars for them that fit on these shelves, especially when the mugs are not there. And so taking advantage of that really does help to clear things up in the pantry. That's how I have this whole thing set up and the reason that I do. But every few months I have to just bring it back together from real life, just not putting things where they should be. It builds up over time. It can be a beautiful pantry, but it needs attention. Now, I probably should do about 10 minutes per week, but instead, most of the time, I just choose to do a big overhaul like this. I have some pie crust stamps that I brought down for the fall to make beautiful pumpkin pies and apple pies that need to go back where they belong. Several extra milk jars that we've acquired when we were milking 2 cows. Now we're only milking 1. And so some of those can be retired to the basement for a little while. Just making this pantry serve our very current needs, and I can always adjust it again later. I love how it turned out. I also had to minimize a few aprons, and that's always really hard for me for some reason. We have a lot of beautiful aprons, but they clutter up the space as you're looking into the pantry if I'm not careful. I'm also swapping out a winter one, again, just little by little, getting rid of the Christmas decor and transitioning it back to winter and then eventually spring. We had a casualty the other day with this plate, but I have a whole stash of them in the basement. I think we've probably lost 3 over the years that we've had this, and I just always will put a new one back up. I find them for only a couple dollars at the thrift shop or antique shop, and so I just have a whole bin of them in the basement, so when something like that happens, I can swap it back out. For dinner tonight, I am going to make creamy chicken and wild rice soup and serve it with, you guessed it, ciabatta. Now, normally I'd put more celery into this recipe, but I don't have it, so I'm just gonna put a few extra carrots. We have 1 random little celery stick. That's it. So I'm gonna start by cutting up carrots, celery, onions, getting them in a pot with some butter, and bringing out that flavor by sauteing it. I used to always just throw the vegetables in with the broth, and I learned that you get a lot more flavor whenever you first saute the vegetables, and so that's a step that I don't skip. I really want to highlight the flavor of these very simple ingredients. Most soups come together with the basics, a lot of root vegetables that you have on hand, garlic, onions, herbs, but using some of these techniques to highlight the ingredients makes them more special. So I'm gonna do 2 large onions. I have a lot of onions and a lot of carrots right now. I like to use what I have on hand before grocery shopping again, just to make sure that nothing goes bad. I have chicken breasts from my sister Ashley's farm. Now she actually is starting to offer shipping on pasture-raised chicken, so I can offer that to you. I will leave a link down in the description box that you can check it out, but I am so thankful to have a sister that raises Angus, pork, and chicken. It's like my one-stop shop, and I love all of her practices. It's all natural, non-GMO, all of the things that I look for, pastured, all that good stuff. So thankfully for me, we don't really have to deal with a lot of the raising of our own and butchering, which I think would be really cool. But having that available with my own sister's farm is such a blessing. So whenever I go to my parents' house, that's where she keeps her freezers, I just stock up. I'm also adding to this soup a cup of wild rice, some fresh rosemary, lots of salt, obviously the chicken, some broth, bay leaves, and then just letting it simmer on the back of the stove. In a separate pot, I'm going to create a roux with butter and flour. I usually like to do about equal parts butter and flour. Cook the flour a bit as the butter is melting to avoid any raw flour taste and make a nice base for thickening. After that, I add the milk. Now, You can just add a roux directly to the soup. Usually if I have some of the liquid component left, I like to just thicken that. I find it's easier to incorporate it that way. And so I stir the milk in, cook a little while, thicken that milk, then pour it in, and then I also top the soup with some cream. If you are interested in the printable variety of this recipe, I have it over on the Farmhouse Hamboon blog. You can go to farmhousehamboon.com, search wild rice soup, print it off, keep it in your arsenal for a cozy winter meal. We love it. All right, well, as always, thank you so much for watching. If you are brand new to my channel, please hit that subscribe. I make new videos every week on food from scratch, natural living, in a handmade home.